What if I told you there's a way to live life on your terms without waiting in line or following the crowd? It all starts with recognizing what draws your heart and pursuing it, no matter what stands in your way. Let me show you how. Here's the first principle, and it begins with a story that changed the way I see obstacles. I've come up with 5 simple principles that can help you recognize your spark and bring it to life. Here's the first: pursue what draws your heart. Let me tell you a quick story. A friend and I went jogging one morning through Central Park. The local Roadrunners group hosts races on weekends, and it's common that after a race, sponsors hand out little rewards, things like apples or bagels. That day, after finishing our run, we saw tables set up with free bagels. Volunteers stood behind them, and a long line of runners had formed on the other side. I turned to my friend and said, "Let's go get a bagel." He looked at the line and replied, "That line's way too long." I said, "But they're giving out bagels for free." He replied, "Yeah, but I don't want to stand in that line." I looked at him and said again, "Free bagel?" He repeated, "Still not worth the wait." And that's when it hit me. People see the world in 2 very different ways. Some focus on what they want, and others notice everything standing between them and what they want. I could only see the bagels. He could only see the line, so I walked up, leaned in between 2 people, reached into the box, and took 2 bagels. Nobody was upset, because the unspoken rule is, go after what you want. Just don't block someone else from doing the same. Sure, I didn't get to pick which kind I got. I took whatever my hand landed on. But I didn't have to stand in line. The lesson: you're not required to wait your turn. You don't have to follow the standard route. You can choose your own way, so long as you're not keeping others from choosing theirs. That's the first principle. Now, the second, this one fascinates me. Back in the 1700s, something started sweeping through Europe and later reached America. It was called puerperal fever, also known at the time as the Black Death of childbirth. Women were dying after giving birth, often within 2 days. This mysterious and devastating illness plagued hospitals. In some places, the mortality rate reached as high as 70%. Imagine that, nearly 3 out of 4 women losing their lives after childbirth. And this was during the Enlightenment, the age of reason, evidence, and observation. Science had taken center stage. Superstition had been pushed aside. Doctors, men of medicine, took on the challenge. They turned to scientific methods, determined to uncover what was causing these tragedies. They examined, observed, and investigated, even studying the bodies of those who had died. In the early mornings, doctors would perform autopsies, and in the afternoons, they would deliver babies and complete their rounds. It wasn't until the mid-1800s that Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, the father of Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, discovered something troubling. He realized that these doctors weren't washing their hands between these 2 tasks. He pointed this out and said, "You're the problem." But no one listened, and they dismissed him as insane. For 30 years, they ignored his advice. Finally, someone took it seriously and realized that if they simply washed their hands, the problem would disappear. When doctors began sterilizing their tools and washing their hands, the deaths from childbed fever ceased. The key takeaway here is this: sometimes you may be the problem. It's important to take responsibility for your actions. You can celebrate your successes, but it's equally vital to own up to your mistakes. Success and failure must be viewed together as a balanced equation. You can take credit for what you do right, but you must also take responsibility when things go wrong. This is a valuable lesson in accountability. The next lesson is about taking care of one another. The United States Navy SEALs are known as some of the world's most elite warriors. When one SEAL was asked about what kind of person makes it through the selection process, he responded that he couldn't explain the exact type of person who succeeds. However, he could tell who doesn't make it. He mentioned that the muscular, tattoo-covered men who try to prove how tough they are don't make it. Neither do the leaders who delegate everything and never take responsibility themselves, nor the star athletes who have never faced real challenges. Interestingly, some of the men who succeed are small and scrawny, and some even shiver in fear. But all those who make it through share one trait. When they're exhausted physically and emotionally, they find the strength to help the person next to them. The message here is clear. Becoming an elite warrior isn't about how tough, smart, or fast you are. It's about learning how to support those around you, whether they're beside you or behind you. Success in life isn't achieved alone. The world is tough and complex, and you can't face it by yourself. If you found your spark, that's great. But remember, when you need help, Ask for it, and when it's offered, accept it. This is a critical skill to develop. When you practice helping each other, you'll gain the most valuable lesson of all, that it's okay to ask for help. You'll soon realize there are many people who are willing to support you. They just didn't know how to offer because you were pretending you had everything under control. The moment you admit you need help, you'll see how many people want to step in and support you. But this only happens if you've first taken the time to help others. The final lesson comes from Nelson Mandela, a figure universally respected as a great leader. His leadership journey is unique, and he was asked how he learned to be such an outstanding leader. He explained that as a boy, he would accompany his father, a tribal chief, to council meetings. He remembered two things. First, they always sat in a circle. And second, his father was always the last to speak. You will hear throughout your life that listening is key to good leadership. But I would argue that it's just as important to learn to be the last to speak. In many boardrooms, even leaders who are generally competent can sometimes dominate discussions, offering their opinions first. Great leadership involves hearing others out before you share your thoughts. It's never too late to learn the art of holding your opinions until everyone else has had their say. This skill does two important things. First, it allows others to feel heard and acknowledged. Everyone gets a chance to contribute and share their thoughts. Secondly, it gives you the advantage of understanding what everyone else thinks before you offer your perspective. The key is to remain quiet. If you agree with someone, don't give an outward sign of approval, like nodding. If you disagree, don't express disapproval either. Simply listen, take it all in. And your only job is to ask questions to better understand their perspective and the reasons behind their opinions. It's crucial to understand where they're coming from, why they hold the views they do, not just what they're saying. Eventually, your time to speak will come. While it sounds simple, it's much more difficult in practice. The ability to be the last to speak takes practice, but it's an essential skill. Nelson Mandela mastered this. Here's a personal story that stands out. A former Undersecretary of Defense was invited to speak at a large conference of about 1,000 people. Standing on stage with a styrofoam cup of coffee, he began his speech, sticking to his planned remarks. But then, he paused, looked at his coffee, and went off script. He shared, "Last year I spoke at this very conference while still the Undersecretary. Back then, they flew me business class. Someone greeted me at the airport, took me to my hotel, checked me in and escorted me to my room. The next morning, someone drove me to the venue, took me in the back entrance, and handed me coffee in a beautiful ceramic cup," he continued. "This year, I flew coach, took a taxi to my hotel, checked myself in, and arrived here on my own. I asked if there was any coffee, and someone pointed to a machine in the corner. I filled my cup with coffee from the machine into this styrofoam cup." He then concluded with a lesson. The ceramic cup wasn't for me, it was for the position I held. I now deserve the styrofoam cup, and so do you. As you gain fame, wealth, or status, people will treat you with more respect. They'll open doors for you, bring you coffee without asking, and call you by titles. But none of that is meant for you. It's meant for the position you hold. Always remember that the styrofoam cup is what you truly deserve. Stay humble and grateful, knowing the perks you enjoy aren't really yours, but for the position you've reached. There came a time in my career when I lost my passion for the work I did. I no longer had the desire to get up and face the day. At some point, everyone will face stress, trauma, or challenges that affect their mental health. It's an important issue that deserves attention. When someone says they're fine, they might not be telling the truth. There's nothing more dangerous than a person who feels alone. Sometimes what a person really needs is for someone to sit with them through their struggles. Not to fix things, but simply to be there. To sit with them in the mud of their difficulties so they don't feel isolated. When my friends are going through tough times, I don't tell them to take it easy. I simply sit with them, and that's enough. When my friends face challenges, I tell them to keep pushing forward. When they're in tears, I remind them to keep going. The message I convey is simple. I am here with you through this struggle. It's a privilege I hold dear. This is the principle by which I live. There was a point in my career when I lost my passion for my work. On the surface, my life appeared perfect. I owned my own business, had great clients, and we did remarkable work. Yet, I couldn't find the motivation to get up and do it anymore. I felt drained, as if I had nothing left to give, and I was deeply ashamed. I began to feel guilty because I thought I shouldn't feel that way. After all, look at what I had, the opportunities before me. I shouldn't be depressed or uninterested in my work. I kept all those negative feelings to myself, which in hindsight was a mistake. The more I bottled them up, the darker they became, feeding off each other. That's the danger of hiding your feelings. They only grow stronger. Eventually, I found myself in a very dark place, yet I poured all my energy into pretending to be happy, in control and successful, even though I didn't feel that way. No one could tell what was really happening inside. It wasn't until a close friend of mine reached out and said, "Something's off, I can't quite place it, but I can tell something's wrong." For some reason, I decided to open up. That moment of honesty was liberating. It felt like a weight had been lifted. All the energy I had spent pretending, hiding, and faking every day was now available to actually begin working on a solution. It's tough when someone close to you says there's something wrong, and you deny it, saying everything is fine. And then they drop it, or worse, they don't even bring it up because they're uncomfortable. None of us like discomfort, especially in relationships. We don't want to create tension or conflict, so we let things go unsaid. But the friends who truly care about you, the ones who love you deeply, are the ones who will stand firm. They won't back down just because you say everything's fine. They'll lean into that tension and keep asking, even when you resist. They'll reassure you with, "I love you, I know something's wrong, and I'm gonna keep asking until you're ready to talk. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. You're not alone." It was that kind of courage from my friend that made it possible for me to open up and step into a place of safety and understanding. Mental health is a topic that's gaining more attention. And after a recent conversation, I realized that I don't like the term mental health. It suggests a fixed state, like if you're not mentally well, then something's wrong with you. It creates this idea that if you experience sadness or doubt, you're imperfect, but that's not the reality. Think about fitness for a moment. You go to the gym and some days you perform well, just lifting heavier weights. Other days, no matter how much you prepared, getting enough sleep, eating well, staying hydrated, your body just doesn't feel right. It's a bad day, but you move on without letting it bother you. We don't approach mental fitness in the same way, having ups and downs, feeling joy as well as sadness, facing moments of doubt and insecurity. That's part of being human. Just like your body experiences pain sometimes, so does your mind. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with your body. I prefer to refer to it as mental fitness rather than mental health. I'm constantly working on my mental fitness, and I allow myself to experience periods of darkness. So when you asked how I am, the space I'm in right now is that I'm feeling quite lonely. I learned how to manage mental fitness during the COVID period more than I had before. We had to face so many challenges, right? In the past, I would have been embarrassed to say I was feeling lonely. I would have hidden it, suppressed it, and avoided negative feelings. But now I simply sit with it, not worried about it. I allow myself to feel it, like having a bad day at the gym. Oddly, even though it's not always enjoyable, I'm somewhat grateful for it because it reminds me I'm human. I accept my humanity. It's relatable. That's where I am right now. More open about being in a darker space. It feels normal, it feels human, and it's part of mental fitness. Without those off days or off weeks, how would I know what to work on? How would I recognize what's good or how to appreciate the good days if I didn't have the down ones? So, in a strange way, I'm grateful for this experience. We tend to think we're stronger or smarter than we are, but in reality, we're not. However, when we come together in teams and groups, we are incredible. Trying to solve all of life's problems on your own doesn't work. And that's part of why addiction exists. We can't solve everything alone, so we turn to harmful behaviors, whether it's drinking, using drugs, or other forms of self-destruction. All addictions damage us, our relationships, and those we care about. There's immense value in someone who loves you saying, "I've got you, I'm here, let's do this together." Or for you to reach out to a friend and admit, "I'm struggling, I can't do this alone. Can you help me?" It's humbling, but it's possibly the most important lesson any of us can learn, to say, "I don't know and I need help." It turns out that there are people around us who want to help, but they don't offer because they didn't know we needed it. We've been too busy presenting ourselves as perfect and having all the answers. If we just asked, they would be there. When people say they feel lonely, I think what they really mean is that as social creatures, we long to feel included. We want to be seen, heard, and understood. My feelings of loneliness come from feeling misunderstood, or like others just don't get me. Or worse, I struggle to express myself in a way that others can understand who I truly am. We can't do this alone. When we find ourselves in darkness, however we define it, feeling alone like no one can help, or like we lack control, the first step is to reach out. Reach out to a friend and say, "I'm struggling," or I need help. Share that you're lonely, sad, or depressed, whatever the feeling may be. The first mistake many people make is trying to fix things right away. But some things don't need fixing. For example, when I have a tough day at the gym, there's nothing to fix. It's just how the day went. Our lack of skills to support others and the way we react to it, looking for help rather than learning how to help others, shows that we're missing something vital. In leadership, the focus is about going first. Being a leader doesn't mean having all the answers or always being right. It means stepping into the unknown, taking the risk to be the first to act. In relationships, someone can take the lead too. One person can go first and show what it means to admit when things aren't going well, and that they don't need fixing, just someone to be there. I believe that two qualities every great leader should have are empathy and perspective. These are often overlooked. Too many leaders get caught up in their status or position, forgetting their real job. The true role of a leader isn't to be in charge, it's to take care of the people they lead. I don't think most people recognize this, and even fewer prepare for it. Early in our careers, our main focus is simply being great at what we do. That's the whole job, perform well. Some go as far as earning advanced degrees just to sharpen their professional abilities, whether in accounting or another field. You start off, put in the effort, and companies usually invest heavily in helping you learn the ropes. They teach you how to use systems, send you off for training courses, and ensure you're equipped to handle the tasks at hand. And you do. You focus, you improve. And if you're consistently good at what you do, you get promoted. Then comes a turning point, one that many never fully prepare for. You go from doing the work to overseeing those who do it. But here's the catch, no one really trains you for that next step. That's how we end up with managers who control more than they support. Often, they're simply doing what they know because what got them the promotion was being excellent at the previous role. There's a shift that needs to happen, a real change in perspective. Some people adapt fast, some take time, and sadly, some never adjust. The shift is moving from being the one accountable for the work to becoming the one responsible for the individuals doing the work. And the truth is, many workplaces don't teach us how to make that leap. Leadership isn't some innate talent, it's a skill. It's something you can develop with practice. Like a muscle, the more consistently you train it, the stronger it gets. And just like muscles, neglect weakens it. Leadership shares a lot with parenting. Anyone can potentially become a parent, but not everyone wants to, and not everyone should. The same applies to leading. That's because leadership requires real personal cost. It means that when everything goes right, others get the applause. And when things fall apart, you take the blame. That's the trade-off. It's staying after hours to coach someone. It's holding back frustration when something fails and instead encouraging, try again. The stress shouldn't fall on the team. It should fall on the one guiding them. Ultimately, strong leaders don't carry the job. They carry the people who carry the job. And their responsibility isn't about outcomes. It's about those delivering the outcomes. I've had conversations with CEOs who confidently claim, my top focus is the customer. And I push back because many haven't had a real customer interaction in over a decade. The role of a CEO or any top leader isn't to serve the customer directly. It's to support the people who support the people who serve the customer. Let me share a personal example. A few months back, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It stood out, not because of luxurious beds or elegant decor, but because of something deeper. Any hotel can purchase a luxury bed. What makes a hotel truly special is the people who bring it to life. At a place like the Four Seasons, when you pass by a staff member and they greet you, it feels genuine. It's not because they were trained to do so. It feels like they want to greet you. There's a sincerity in the way they interact. In their lobby, there's a coffee counter. One afternoon, I stopped there for a cup, and the barista on duty, a young man named Noah, made the experience memorable. He was upbeat, warm, and engaging. I enjoyed the interaction so much that I ended up tipping him generously. He made something as ordinary as buying coffee feel enjoyable. Curious, I asked Noah, "Do you enjoy working here?" Without hesitation, he replied, "I love it." Naturally, I wanted to know more, so I asked, "What is it about working here that makes you feel that way?" He answered immediately. All day long, different managers stop by to check in with me, asking how I'm doing, if I need anything to make my job easier. And it's not just my direct supervisor. Any manager will do it. Then he shared something that struck me. He said, "I also work at Caesar's Palace. Over there, the managers are always watching to catch us doing something wrong. When I'm there, I try to stay under the radar and just get through the shift. But here I feel like I can be myself. The same person, two very different environments, resulting in completely different experiences for both employee and guest. In leadership, we often focus on hiring the right people. We say things like, I need to find better team members, or I've got to get the right people on board. But more often than not, it's not about the people, it's about the atmosphere we're creating for them. A healthy workplace brings out the best in people, like Noah at the Four Seasons. A poor environment turns that same person into someone simply trying to survive the day. Yet we're quick to fire when someone isn't performing. Imagine if we treated our families that way. You failed a test. Time for a new kid. We don't give up on our children. Why do we give up so easily on employees? We struggle to lead with empathy. Here's an example of what a lack of empathy looks like. An employee is called into the office. They're told their numbers have been down for 3 quarters, and if it doesn't improve, their job may be in jeopardy. That kind of pressure does little to motivate someone to show up energized the next day. Empathy sounds different, the same situation, but the conversation begins with, hey, your numbers are down this quarter. Are you doing okay? Is something going on? People go through challenges. Maybe a child is sick, a marriage is going through difficulty, or a parent is unwell. We can't always see it, but it impacts work. Being empathetic means caring about the individual, not only their productivity. Over the past few decades, the work environment has been shaped by outdated business models that treat humans like parts in a machine. We're still dealing with the aftermath of that thinking, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And these practices hurt people, and they hurt business. Let me illustrate. The idea that shareholder interest should come before all else took root in the late 1970s. It gained traction throughout the 80s and 90s and has since become the default mindset. Ask almost any publicly traded company what their main focus is, and they'll say maximize shareholder value. Seriously, that's like a coach choosing to cater to the fans instead of the players. How can you expect to build a strong, cohesive team with that kind of thinking? Yet this has become the standard. We rarely question it. We don't see it as broken, outdated, or harmful. But the world has changed. The 80s and 90s were marked by economic booms, global stability, and the easing of Cold War tensions. Those days are long gone. We're not in a season of abundance and calm anymore. The methods that worked then don't work now. Take mass layoffs, for example. Reducing headcount just to balance budgets has become so normal in American business that we barely recognize how destructive it is. Not only to the individuals affected, but to the long-term health of companies themselves. Organizations talk about wanting trust and teamwork, then turn around and announce a fresh wave of layoffs. Want to know the fastest way to wipe out trust and collaboration in a single day? Lay people off. Instantly, fear sets in. Imagine someone going home and saying to their family, I can't support us anymore because the company didn't hit some arbitrary target. And it's not only the people who lose their jobs who are impacted. Think about those who stay. Every choice a company makes sends a message, and the message here is clear. This isn't a place where loyalty, hard work, or dedication matter. If the numbers don't line up, and your name's on the wrong side of the chart, then your job isn't safe. So what happens? People show up to work in fear. They hide their insecurities. They keep their heads down. They stay silent. Now we're expecting younger generations to enter workplaces like this and thrive. To grow in confidence, learn from failure, form meaningful relationships, and overcome distractions. We throw around the word vulnerability as if it's a badge leaders should wear. But it's not about parading emotion. It's about creating a culture where people feel safe enough to raise their hand and say, I'm struggling, I need help, or I made a mistake. That's what true openness looks like. But in most workplaces today, no one wants to speak up because they're afraid of being targeted when the next round of cuts comes. So they stay quiet, they pretend, they cover up, they go through the motions. And in doing so, we've created environments where honesty is punished. Fear is the norm, and authenticity is nearly impossible. Yet we expect the youngest among us to succeed in these spaces, to break through, to feel seen and heard. We have to ask ourselves, how can that happen when the culture itself is built on silence, stress, and survival? We often expect young people to rise to leadership, yet we don't always reflect on the environments we've placed them in. We tell them, you're the leaders of tomorrow, while we hold the reins today. So the real question becomes, what kind of example are we setting? That's where true empathy begins. when we stop and ask ourselves how our actions shape their world. It's hard to ignore the rising levels of depression, anxiety, and even suicide among youth. The data is deeply troubling. A whole generation is growing up with lower self-worth than those before them. And to make things more complicated, they're being shaped in a world filled with curated realities, social media platforms that encourage us to project perfect lives while quietly suffering inside. Validation now looks like likes and followers. That digital approval has become a measure of self-worth. And yes, this is a form of addiction. Like any dependency, it will gradually strain your relationships, consume your time, cost you money, and leave you feeling emptier than before. One of the hardest parts about addiction is this. Most addicts know the behavior is harmful, yet they continue. Many who struggle with alcohol know it's damaging, but they still reach for it. That's how strong addiction can be. The same can be said for our relationship with our devices. Deep down, many of us recognize that our habits are unhealthy, even compulsive. So we have to ask, what are we trading for the convenience and connection we get from technology? Because everything comes with a price. Nothing is without consequence. Our brains release dopamine when we engage with our phones and social media. That's the chemical that makes us feel good. It's why getting a message feels satisfying. We've all experienced it, feeling lonely, so we send a bunch of texts just to hear back from someone. It feels rewarding. It's why we keep checking who liked our photo, who followed back, who commented. And when growth is slow, we question our worth. Did I post the wrong thing? Am I being ignored? Even something as simple as being unfriended online can be incredibly painful for young people. Why? Because that dopamine hit is tied to our sense of acceptance. It's the same chemical response we get from smoking, drinking, or gambling. It's no surprise then. It's powerfully addictive. We've placed age restrictions on alcohol, tobacco, and gambling because we understand their risks. Yet we give unrestricted access to smartphones and social platforms. It's like leaving the liquor cabinet open for teenagers and telling them, if life gets hard, here's an escape. This matters because most alcoholics took their first drink in their teens. During those early years, all we truly crave is approval, usually from our parents. But now, an entire generation is being raised in a high-pressure stage of life, with constant access to a digital escape that mimics emotional comfort. As we grow into our teenage years, there's a shift that naturally happens. We begin seeking the approval of our peers. While this can be frustrating for our parents, it's an essential part of how we begin to connect beyond our families and start integrating into the wider social world. It's an incredibly intense and often anxious stage of life, where we're meant to start depending more on our friends. Sometimes, purely by chance, a young person might come across alcohol and discover how dopamine dulls the pressure and stress of this phase. Sadly, that association can become fixed in the brain. From that point on, during moments of serious stress, instead of leaning on a friend, they may reach for a drink. Whether it's stress from relationships, money, or work, these are common reasons someone struggling with alcohol may turn to it. The issue isn't just with substances anymore. What I've noticed is how easy it's become for young people to form deep attachments to digital devices and platforms that constantly trigger dopamine, and it's having a long-term effect. As these individuals grow, many struggle to form sincere, lasting relationships. These aren't just assumptions. They'll often admit this themselves. They'll say most of their friendships feel surface level. They enjoy spending time with their peers, but deep down, they know those same friends might back out if something more interesting comes up. The problem isn't just emotional, it's developmental. The skill to create meaningful bonds wasn't practiced, and the ability to manage pressure in healthy ways was never built. So when heavy stress comes along, they don't seek comfort in people, they turn to screens. They seek relief in social media or other quick fixes that only offer temporary comfort. Studies make it clear people who use platforms like Facebook more often tend to experience higher levels of depression compared to those who use them less frequently. It's all about proportion. A glass of wine isn't the problem. It's when it turns into dependency. Gambling can be entertaining until it becomes uncontrolled. The same goes for phones and social platforms. They're not inherently harmful, but the imbalance is. If you're out to dinner with someone and constantly messaging someone else, there's a problem. That's not presence, that's dependency. If you're in a meeting and your phone's on the table, regardless of whether it's face up or face down, you're silently signaling to everyone that the people in the room aren't your priority. That inability to put the device away, that's a clear sign of dependency. If the first thing you do in the morning is check your phone instead of acknowledging your partner, That's a habit with consequences. And like any habit that crosses the line into addiction, it doesn't stay contained. It eventually chips away at our relationships, robs us of time and energy, drains resources, and makes our lives harder, not better. There's a generation growing up struggling with low self-esteem and without the tools to manage stress effectively. Now layer that with impatience. They've been raised in a world that runs on instant rewards. Want to buy something, a few taps online and it shows up the next day. Want to watch a movie? Just hit play. No need to check times or wait in line. TV shows? Entire seasons are ready to stream. Some even hold off until all episodes are out, just so they can consume them in one go. Everything they desire is available almost immediately, except when it comes to job satisfaction and meaningful relationships. There's no shortcut for that. These are so evolving, often uncomfortable experiences. They require effort, presence, and time. What this younger generation truly needs to embrace is patience. The things that carry real significance, like purpose in work, happiness, confidence, skill development, don't arrive overnight. Yes, certain parts might happen faster, but the overall path takes time. It's tough, it's uneven, it's long. And without asking for guidance and building emotional tools, many risk falling apart along the way. The harsh reality? We're already witnessing it. More accidental overdoses, more young people stepping away from school because of depression, things we rarely saw before. It's heartbreaking. That's the worst case outcome. But even the so-called best case scenario isn't much better. Imagine an entire generation living through their days without ever truly experiencing joy. Work? It's fine. Relationships? They're okay. Just a flat existence drifting from one day to the next without deeper meaning or connection. This brings me to the fourth point, environment. We take these bright, capable young people, dealt a rough start through no fault of their own, and place them in workplace cultures that prioritize metrics over human growth. These environments often fail to guide them through the complexities of a tech-saturated life, and they don't show them the value of delayed rewards. They rarely teach how meaningful it is to dedicate yourself to something over time, something that can't be wrapped up in a month or even a year. Phones should be absent from conference rooms, absolutely none. And I'm not talking about leaving them face down next to you or outside the door while texting. I mean really absent. Because here's what happens. We sit in silence before a meeting, glued to our screens, and the meeting begins. No small talk, no connection, no trust being built. But human connection grows in the small moments. It happens when you're sitting around and someone says, "How's your dad? I heard he wasn't well." And the reply might be, "He's better, thanks. Home now." And then someone says, "I'm so glad to hear that." That moment, simple as it is, matters. That's where connection lives. That's how relationships begin. That's how genuine relationships are built. You know those everyday moments. "Hey, did you get that report done?" "Oh no, I forgot." "No worries, I can give you a hand." It's simple. That's how trust begins to grow. Not in grand gestures or overnight events. Even hard times don't create trust instantly. It's about the slow, reliable, day-by-day interactions. We need to make room for those seemingly small exchanges. They're the foundation of something real. When I go out to dinner with friends, we'll often agree to leave our phones behind. I mean, who are we really calling? Maybe one of us will bring a phone just in case we need to get a ride home. It reminds me of how someone might remove alcohol from their home. Not because they're weak, but because willpower alone isn't always dependable. When temptation is out of reach, things get easier. Telling yourself not to check your phone rarely works. But if the phone isn't there, suddenly you're more in tune with your surroundings. That's where creativity begins, when your mind isn't constantly engaged. True ideas show up when you're just living, walking, seeing something new, and thinking, wait, maybe there's a better way to do that. That's what sparks progress. But we're losing these moments by staying glued to our screens. None of us should be sleeping with our phones by the bed. Keep them in the living room. Take away that pull. If you wake up at 2 a.m. and it's right there, of course you'll grab it. And it only makes things worse. If it's across the house, you're more likely to fall back asleep peacefully. But it's my alarm clock. That's fine. Buy an actual alarm clock. They're cheap. We can't afford to overlook how much our phones and social media are reshaping the way we live. It's not that I'm against technology. I'm concerned with how much of our attention it's absorbing. If you can't spend 90 minutes at dinner without checking your phone, that's a problem. Try airplane mode. Be fully there. And here's something I've learned. You don't get to call yourself present. That's something someone else feels and reflects back to you. Meditation has taught me this, how to be calm, quiet, and focused. When a thought comes, you acknowledge it, then gently set it aside to return to later. That way, when someone is talking to you, your mind isn't racing to prepare your reply. You're actually listening. All of your focus goes to them. Presence is when, at the end of the conversation, your friend looks at you and says, "Thanks for really listening. I felt understood." That's the kind of connection we should all be striving for. We are shaped by the experiences that form us early in life. As I've said before, much of who we become is set during our formative years. Life then gives us the ongoing chance to make choices that either stay true to our inner nature or pull us away from it. I believe one of the main reasons many people feel out of place or uncertain about who they are is because they're making decisions that don't reflect their deeper identity, their core reason for being. We often come up with ways to justify actions that don't sit right with us. We say things like, "That's just how the game works," or "This is what my supervisor expects," or "Everyone else is doing it," or even "There's no other way." It becomes easier to remove ourselves from the weight of responsibility. You mentioned athletes who reach the top of their field, only to fall into deep sadness afterward. That story shows up again and again. Olympic champions, for example, Michael Phelps wins more medals than anyone else, and then quickly faces depression. Andre Agassi reaches the peak of his sport, then falls into the same emotional low. From my conversations with several people in those worlds, especially athletes, I've come to notice a pattern. But this applies just as much in business or other fields. Early on, they choose a target that I'd personally describe as narrow and centered on self. Like, I want to be the greatest at this one thing. Whether it's tennis, swimming, golf, it's a personal ambition. Some even phrase it as a wanting to win the Olympics. But technically, you don't win the Olympics. You win in your sport. From a young age, every step they take is in service of this single defined outcome. Even their friendships and professional bonds become filtered through the lens of, "Can you help me get there?" And once someone no longer serves that purpose, be it a coach or a companion, they're often cast aside. The cost is high. Missed birthdays, skipped holidays, absent from major life moments. Everything is sacrificed in the name of performance and practice. Then, during interviews at events like the Olympics, they're asked why they push themselves so hard. Many say, "I do it to inspire the kids." But honestly, that's rarely the truth. I've seen their old vision boards, packed with images of medals, podiums, luxury cars, and wealth. There's no child on those boards. The inspiration part, while real, is just an added outcome. It's a byproduct, not the original purpose. And when their time at the top ends, either because they achieved the goal or because they can no longer compete, they're left with a life that was built entirely around a short-term personal goal. And with that goal gone, they realize they've lost more than just their drive. They often find themselves without many close relationships, without a wider sense of connection, and without a deeper reason to keep going. Because for 20 years or more, they've only had one mission, and now it's over. And so they find themselves empty. I've noticed this in stage performers, those who dedicate years to reaching Broadway or the West End. Every acting class, every vocal session, every late night rehearsal, it all leads to that moment. They finally make it, and then a heaviness sets in. Sometimes it's depression, sometimes just a sense of dullness. I've seen it happen to top level executives too. They chase a number. Once I hit that $1 million mark, then I'll feel complete. But it doesn't work that way. What I've come to understand is that when our pursuits are centered only on what we want for ourselves, they often fall short. We are wired for connection, for meaning that comes from reaching beyond our own interests. There's a deep joy and sense of meaning that can only be found in giving to others. Think of how life shifts when you have a child, or when you fall in love. Think of all the spontaneous, illogical things we've done in the name of love. Booking flights, crossing oceans, showing up just to say, "I love you." It all feels meaningful because we're no longer doing it just for ourselves. Raising a child, sacrificing for someone you love. These experiences stretch far beyond our own timelines. They don't fade once we're gone. They're not short-term wins. They're lasting and expansive. That said, there's nothing wrong with chasing personal goals. There's nothing wrong with wanting to grow. but it needs to connect to something larger, something that continues beyond a single milestone. Seeing life as an unfolding journey rather than a single event brings a much healthier perspective. I don't always connect with the phrase self-improvement, but I do believe deeply in self-awareness. Every one of us walks around with blind spots, missing insights, or patterns we haven't yet noticed. And those gaps, they'll probably always be there in some form. Some people go through life content to ignore them. They stay stuck. Over time, that stagnation can show up in the body or the mind, gradually wearing a person down. But for anyone who wants to grow, for those of us who long to understand ourselves more clearly, we actively seek out insight. That can come in all kinds of ways, even through relationships. I remember a time I was dating someone and she told me I wasn't a good listener. My first reaction, you realize what I do for work, right? Listening is literally my job. But I took her words to heart and enrolled in a class about listening. What I found was pretty eye-opening. Professionally, I was excellent at listening, especially to people I probably never see again. But when it came to friends, family, people who mattered most, I wasn't applying that skill at all. I had convinced myself that because I knew how to listen, I didn't need to work on it. But I was wrong. That moment opened my eyes to a blind spot. It helped me see how I could grow into a better brother, partner, son, and friend. I had to learn to hold space in ways I never realized were missing. And then comes the practice. That's what awareness is about. I believe our well-being begins with awareness. The unfortunate reality is that some only recognize they struggle with listening after a relationship ends. Others realize their poor eating habits after a major health scare. Awareness often strikes when life hits hard. And I truly believe anyone who wants to contribute meaningfully to others should take ownership of how they show up in the world and how the world shapes them in return. Mental clarity, emotional stability, physical health, the ability to build and sustain relationships. These are essential for those who want to offer more to the people around them. In my eyes, being healthy isn't only a personal pursuit, it's a way to serve others better. For too long, we've forgotten how deeply social we are. The rise of digital distractions, phones, apps, endless scrolling has clouded our ability to connect in meaningful ways. What I came to understand is this: presence isn't something you choose when it's convenient. It's something you actively train for. Anyone who's practiced mindfulness or meditation knows it can absolutely benefit your mental and physical well-being. That part is clear. But there's something even more important. When you sit quietly and meditate, you're not trying to empty your mind. You're learning to focus. Maybe it's your breath, a phrase. You center your attention on that one thing. When distractions pop up, like wondering if you left the oven on, you acknowledge the thought, set it aside, and return your focus. Now think about sitting with a friend who's going through something tough. Are you truly listening, or are you waiting for your chance to reply? All that mindfulness training comes into play here. You tune out everything else, the noises, the distractions, your own urge to share, and you lean in, completely focused on what they're saying. And when your own thoughts bubble up, maybe you want to offer advice or relate to their story, you set that aside for later. Because this moment isn't about you. And when the conversation ends and they say, "Thank you, I feel heard," or "Thanks for being there," that's a clear sign. You were truly present. That's what brings purpose to life. Not just practicing stillness to feel better inside, but using it as a way to support someone's health. Of course, it's okay to enjoy the personal benefits of growth and healing. But there's a deeper fulfillment that only comes when what you've learned helps someone else. That's where meaning and connection come alive. In our work, in our relationships, in our daily interactions. There's something beautifully paradoxical in all of this. Real love is found in giving something up for another. Whether it's becoming a better communicator, caring for your health, or learning to slow down and be mindful. If those things ultimately lead you to serve someone else, then they take on a far greater meaning. So if you're ready to grow, make it count. Don't keep it to yourself. Use it to lift someone else. Start today and be that presence someone's been needing.